All right, well, let's talk a little bit about the expectations and rubric for discussion boards. The first unit is pretty simple. You're just introducing yourself, so the expectations are really not that full. So let's start at Unit 2 so we get a better sense of exactly what's expected for the discussions. So if we go here, we launch the board, and you'll see that the first two entries or posts will be from me. One will be the assignment, and one will be, well, there's not going to always be two, but in the first couple weeks, there'll be a couple of additional things. So here we have the actual assignment and then a sample. If you come here and you see assignment details, it will tell you in general when things are due. It will give you some overview, but this is not exactly the assignment. The assignment is this one, where it says the assignment. And you have to scroll all the way down, and it gives you some overview and some things to think about. And then here's where it says the assignment. And it's going to ask you to talk about these issues here. Now, let us go back, however, to under details where the rubric is. So here's the rubric. This is a summarized one, but nevertheless, it gets the themes across. So this is what you will actually see as I'm grading. And here's what I'm looking for. Application of learning material content. The initial post demonstrates understanding of learning material content. So here's what that means. Yes, we've all had some life experiences and we're going to share them, but we're going to share our life experiences grounded in what we learned from the texts, right? So you're assigned various readings. So if you go to books and resources, here's all the things that we're assigned to read. I'm not going to click on every single one, but your assigned readings are chapters from Introduction to Ethics, chapters from Basic Introduction to Philosophy, and then you have all these additional sources here that are that you're asked to read, right? So in other words, as we're looking at ethics and character in Unit 2, we're reading all kinds of philosophers, philosophical theories, as well as other connections to some practical considerations. So back to your discussion board. When you answer the question down here, it's great to share your wealth of information and wisdom on a personal level, but remember that at the end of the day, we want to make sure that you have some stuff that demonstrates understanding of learning material. In other words, mention stuff that you learned. Bring in something that you learned, because the whole point of this is not so much for us to share stories, but rather for us to be challenged to think at a higher level. And the philosophers that we're studying are that higher level. So we want to show that we actually read and understood some of the stuff from this week's unit. Application of course knowledge. Initial post contributes unique perspectives or insights gleaned from personal experience or examples from the discipline. So what we really mean here is, yes, again, of course you're going to use your own life, but from the discipline. In other words, we want to make sure that we're talking on an ethical level. Again, not just sharing stories, not just, complaining about an issue that we experienced or talking about how we, worked practically through an obstacle or through problems, but rather about talking on an ethical level, which means getting to the principles behind things. There's a separate video that you can watch on principles, ethical principles. So in other words, to get full points here, you need to make sure that you are doing an ethical analysis, an ethical deliberation, not just sharing an experience. Your responses. Remember, you have two responses that are due. You have a few extra days to do them. And the thing about them is that they need to be substantive. In other words, that means that you respond to somebody's ideas. I mean, it's nice to say, hey, Bob, I really enjoyed reading your post. You're awesome. But that's not substantive. You're not really engaging somebody on an intellectual level. And that's what we want, some sort of intellectual level. Or even suggest, hey, that reminds me of something else I read in the readings. In other words, you're bringing something to bear that has some weighty relevance to the course. Organization, make sure that it's logical and it's clear and also relevant to the topic. Sometimes if people are a little confused still, or maybe don't have much time, they start to talk about all kinds of things that don't necessarily relate either to the question or within each other relating to any single point. So make sure that things are well organized. And before you're done, read it over and ask yourself, did this actually answer the question? And then lastly, professional language. The main thing here is we need to make sure that we have no grammar errors, right? You don't necessarily have to format or use APA or MLA, nothing like that. However, it's important to get into the habit of reading over our work to make sure we don't have spelling errors, to make sure that we don't have incomplete sentences, that make sure that we punctuate properly, we capitalize our I's, that kind of stuff. And this is a good example or a good habit to get into as you move forward in your career, because having good grammar and proofreading everything that you write is an important thing, because that creates professional impressions, right? You don't want to come off in front of your colleagues and supervisors as someone who doesn't check over the work and who has lots of grammar errors in their emails or whatever. But anyways, hopefully that helps a little bit on what we're after and what I'll be looking for as I am grading your discussion board posts.